Welcome back. I'm your host, Jeff Bornstein on Life After War, and along with my co-host, Kimberly. Hello,
Hi,
Kimberly.
everybody. Welcome back to Life After War.
And so cool to be here, man. Talk about cool. It's hot. 9:15 in the morning.
Hot.
It's hot outside. Are
It's
you
like
kidding?
100 degrees, it felt like.
Even the thermometer's like, screw it, I ain't. No, man, I talk about hot. You know where I get my information from, right?
Who do you get your information
Well, our
from?
first guest.
Who's that?
Our first guest, he's a weathercaster. I want to know the difference between a weatherman and a weathercaster. I don't know.
Well, we can ask him that in a little bit.
We're going to find out.
But I bet a lot of our viewers out there didn't know that he was in the military.
He was military, he's a radio personality, and he did some other cool stuff. Very funny guy, and we've had the opportunity to open up for him numerous times. Super funny guy. So
He's
please
great.
welcome. You guys know him, NBC4 news weathercaster. Hello, Fritz Coleman. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Welcome.
I'm proud of you. This is awesome.
Thank you.
It's a great service you're providing veterans.
Thank you for being on our show.
I'm happy to be here.
Oh, are you kidding? This is awesome. So, gosh, you know, we've known each other for a while, and in the years that we have worked together, it was only up to maybe a couple years ago that I realized, you were in the Navy?
Yeah.
Right? So
well, you know, I wasn't a combat veteran, but I was a Vietnam era veteran, and I didn't talk
But you
about it.
saw
that
stuff
much.
happen, though.
Oh no, we were in a couple of hairy circumstances.
Yeah.
I was in the Navy from 1969 to 1972. It was a 4-year hitch, but at the end of the Vietnam War, Richard Nixon was downsizing the military, so I got a 6-month early out. So I did 3.5 years.
Wow. Well, I definitely want to talk about that, but let's work backwards.
Okay.
So you were a radio personality, which is what the Navy helped you do, and then you were funny doing stand-up, right?
Well,
so talk about how you got from the radio into the comedy.
Okay. When I got out of the military, I was out of work one day. That's how the Navy helped me, because I worked for Armed Forces Radio and Television. I was on a ship for 3.5 years. And while I was out there, I made tapes, radio tapes, and sent them out to commercial radio stations. And my home was Philadelphia, so I sent them to Philadelphia radio stations, and I got hired the day after I got out of the Navy. 2 things happened to me. I got my first pair of glasses, and I got my first job in radio.
Wow.
And I was employed ever since, and I did 15 years in radio. While I was in radio, this was a different era in radio. I was a DJ, and when you were a DJ in those days, you got invited to host in clubs, and I got invited to be a host at a jazz room in Western New York State, in Buffalo, New York. And while I was the host, in jazz clubs, you know, jazz musicians are on their own clock. So although the show is advertised to start at 8 o'clock, if the band is not ready to start at 8 o'clock because the stars are not aligned properly, we're not going on until 8:20. So the owners of these clubs, because they're charging a 2-drink minimum and a $20 cover, said, I want you just to get up there and talk from 8 o'clock until the band decides to go on. And I had nothing to say to these people. So just as a defense mechanism, I began to write material for myself.
Right before you went on stage?
Oh, no. I would work on it, and then I would build out, and I had a minute of material, and it expanded to 5 minutes, and then I had 15 minutes of material. Then I was the opening act for these bands. And then I got a little smug. I said, you know, you're not bad at this. And so I began to develop a following, and the jazz club owner gave me my own night. He gave me the dark night, Monday night. You can take it over and do your comedy that night. And so then I said, well, I've conquered Buffalo, New York. I have a solid 15 minutes of material. I must be ready for L.A.
And that, my friend, is how comedy stars are born.
That's right, out of stupidity and naivete. And so I came out here, and I was working at the Comedy Store. I was a staff performer, and one night the news director from NBC and his wife were in the audience. I talked about having done the weather in the Navy and not knowing anything about it, but I was ordered to do it, so I did it and just made it up. And he thought that was amusing. And he and his wife came backstage afterwards and introduced themselves and said, this is a weird question. Do you have any interest in doing some vacation relief work for me? My main weatherman hasn't had a vacation in a year. I need help on weekends. And I was making $45 a night at the Comedy Store. I said, when do you want me to start?
Right.
Wow.
So he offered me a chance to audition and get the job, and I was hired and did vacation relief for 2 years. And then I was bumped up to the main job, and I've been there 33 years. That's my history.
Wow, so that's
a true story.
That's so impressive.
So how did being in the Navy, or in retrospect, in being in the Navy, did you still use any of that today in what you're doing life after war, if you will?
Oh, no. The Navy did a couple of things for me. It saved my life at a time when I was a walking adolescent idiot. It was so important for me to help me grow up. Second of all, it introduced me to my career. When I went in there, they were looking for volunteers to work for Armed Forces Radio and Television on a ship. I was on the USS John F. Kennedy, a member of the 6th Fleet out of Norfolk, Virginia. So it gave me my career. It introduced me to my career. And the beautiful thing is, when you're in the military and you have a job, regardless of how bad you are, you stay in that job. You don't get fired.
Right.
So I had the freedom and the gift of being really bad on the radio, but you never got fired. So I got to be bad for 3.5 years until I got good. So honestly, it introduced me to my career, and enlisting was probably the best decision.
Well, I was going to ask you, so what's the scariest thing you've ever seen? But maybe being bad on radio is the scariest thing you ever see. I don't. What was the scariest thing you ever saw?
Well, I was on an aircraft carrier, and although we were in non-combat circumstances, we were in the North Atlantic and then in the Mediterranean, did all the Mediterranean ports of call. I saw scary things. I saw tragic accidents shipboard. I was part of a couple of fires on this ship, and to be on a ship thousands of miles out in the ocean is not a pleasant experience.
Oh, yeah.
We had 90 airplanes on this aircraft carrier and saw many pilots and crew members on these ships die in accidents on the ship. We were sent at one time over by President Nixon to evacuate American citizens from Israel when they had a flare-up with the Palestinians. This was, I was in 69 to 72, so this was after the 67 war. Things were really tense over there for a couple of years. And so we went to evacuate American citizens. As a matter of fact, when you're in the 6th Fleet, when you're on an East Coast ship and you do what's called a shakedown cruise, after they fix the ship for a period of time in the shipyard, they send you to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for what's called a shakedown cruise, where they work out the kinks in the new equipment. And so when you do these, you go out for 2 weeks at a time. So we had 2 weeks worth of clothes and 2 weeks worth of money, and left our cars on the pier, and guys left pregnant wives on the pier and timed their pregnancies to have their kids from their home. And then there was an emergency in Israel, and Nixon sent us over there, and we came back 10 months later. We had 2 weeks worth of clothes, 2 weeks worth of money, pregnant wives, cars with cracked windows on the fleet, and came back 10 months later.
A lot of comedy now, right?
Oh my!
Right.
So, but I mean, I don't claim that was, you know, a harrowing, life-threatening experience compared to what my brethren were doing in the 7th Fleet, which was Vietnam. But it was scary at the time for a 20-year-old.
Did you make any lifelong friends?
All of them everybody I was assigned with, we were in the public affairs department on the ship. You know, it's like anybody that goes through that experience with you is your brother from that point on.
I love this picture of you. This is a great picture. Look at this. This picture of you over there.
Yeah, let's compare.
Look at that.
Oh my God.
Oh, I loved that picture. That was a great picture.
You still have that hat?
Yes.
Do you?
That's a great picture.
And
what rank did you get out by?
I was in E3. I was a seaman,
Okay.
only because you know, I was so happy doing the job I wanted to do. I didn't want more responsibility, so I never went for a petty officer, which would have been E4.
I've heard a lot of guys say that. I'm thinking.
I had the gig of a lifetime.
Right.
It was great.
So when you were doing radio, did you have an opportunity to hone any of your comedic skills at all?
Yes. I mean, you know, radio was different then. You could have a little more personality, and so just learning to ad-lib and learning not to be frustrated by stuff that doesn't go your way.
Yeah.
That helped me later in my television career. So when electronic things would go bad, and that in combination with working in clubs to drunks at 1 o'clock in the morning, there was nothing that could throw you.
You just go with the flow.
Yeah, that's all you do.
I want to hear more about this, but let's go ahead and take a quick break.
Folks, we're going to have more with Fritz, but right now we've got some shout-outs from our viewers out there across the country. Folks, stay tuned for more Life After War on emPOWERme.tv.
Hello, I'm Ron Bell, veteran U.S. Navy Seabee, builder 2nd class. I served with Amphibious Construction Battalion 1 out of Coronado, California, as well as Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 40 out of Port Hueneme, California. I'd like to give a shout out to my Seabee brethren around the world, and you're watching Life After War on emPOWERme.tv.
Hi, my name is Steve Silverman. I'm a Vietnam veteran with the U.S. Navy, honorable discharge. I'd like to do a shout out to my daughter-in-law, Hannah, on active duty in the U.S. Coast Guard up in Astoria, Oregon. I love you, girl. You're watching Life After War on emPOWERme.tv.
Hi, my name is Sarah Armstrong, and I'm retired E3 U.S. Air Force, and you're watching Life After War on emPOWERme.tv.
That was great.
Welcome back. That was great, man. Welcome back to Life After War. Again, I'm Jeff Bornstein with Kimberly, and we're here with Fritz Coleman. Hello, Fritz.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey.
Fritz.
So I love those
Great to
shout-outs,
see
man.
those.
I love
That's
those
awesome.
shout-outs. Ron Bell, veteran, the one in the pool. I like the little shark.
That was like my favorite part. I love it.
Ron, you did great, buddy. Thank you for your service, man. So,
And those guys, the Seabees, those are the construction guys
Yeah.
that go in there to establish airstrips and
Right.
living
stuff
facilities.
gets blown up, they rebuild it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'd
they go
never
in there
seen that,
before
yeah.
the enemy's been cleared.
Right. Call it recon.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So we were talking about you. How have you been able to go ahead and implement what you've learned in the Navy into your real world today?
Every
Well,
day.
Life after
I'll
war,
tell
if you will. Yeah.
I'll tell you. The Navy saved me from myself. I was just a wandering late adolescent kid, and I never stuck to anything. I had no idea what I was doing on the planet. You know, so 65% of children experience the same thing. But the greatest thing about the Navy was, and I had gone to a military school when I was younger. I went to Valley Forge Military Academy in Pennsylvania. This ended up helping me in boot camp because I became what's known as an RPOC, which is a Recruit Petty Officer Chief. If you had any experience in the military when you went to boot camp, they would allow you to drill the guys, and you would sort of be
You're a squad leader, or something like that.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Or platoon,
So boot wasn't easy, but it made it slightly less edgy for me.
Right, right.
So it was cool. So, but what it taught me was that when you sign up and you become a GI, government issue,
Right.
you can't quit. It doesn't matter how you don't like it. It doesn't matter how hard it
You
gets.
don't even own you.
You have this job. So for the first time in my life, I had to make a decision and then follow it to its conclusion and learn discipline. The only way you survive in a military environment is to be disciplined and to be able to respect authority, which I had no respect for authority. And so my Navy experience just helped me be a better human being. It sounds like an exaggeration, but it's absolutely true. And it came at a time in my life when I desperately needed it.
My dad used to say to me, you know, 'cause I walked that same path. You know, I mean, I was a runaway. I did the drugs. I dropped out of high school. I finally went back to high school when I was 19. I was the oldest kid, 19 years old. I finally got a diploma at 19. My dad said, "Go in the army and make a man out of you." And I did that because he was Korea. He went to Korea, Korean vet. And I said, "I'll show you." So I went in the army. And you know what? Best thing I ever did in my life.
And that's funny that you mentioned that because my father did not go into the military. He was a bit of a politician and was able to get out of the military during World War II instead of signing up. And I don't have any opinion about that. I don't judge him for that. He just used the skills he got, and he got what he needed to do. But when I joined the military and I had this experience that he hadn't had, that's when he stopped looking down at me as a son and he looked at me eye to eye as an equal human being. And I saw it when I came home, and I'd been to sea and I had stories, and he never talked down to me after that because I had done something he didn't do.
That's
How
pretty
cool
awesome.
is that?
Yeah, it was really cool.
Defining
That is.
moment.
Yeah.
You know, mine was kind of flipped. Keeping it short, I had a plan. I always have a plan. It always goes awry. I had a plan that I was going to go ahead and I wanted to maybe do 15 to 20 years. That was my plan. You know, I'll show you, Dad. I'll show you. And I ended up having a seizure when I was stationed in Germany. So they gave me a medical discharge out. But what they said to me was, you can either. And I was a communication specialist, intelligence. They said, what we're going to do is we're going to put you either behind a desk or we're going to pay you X amount and you can get out. And of course, when you're 23, you're cocky. Give me the money, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I wish I would have stayed in.
Right.
You know, but that's why I was talking to Christine, one of our other vets, a few weeks ago. She said she could read the DD-214, so I have some work for her. But I tell you, military changed my life, and like you were talking about.
In a good way.
In a very good way, yeah. And you were talking about this, even though you didn't see combat, we've talked about it numerous times on the show. do you know anybody who's ever suffered from PTSD? And
Yes.
yeah, and do you talk
Yeah.
to them? And how does that affect you as a person?
Well, I, especially lately, because there has been a lot of news. I'm in the news business, and so I hear more of it than a lot of people do. Veterans issues are coming to the fore right now. We have a new Secretary of Veterans Affairs. There's been a lot of raised consciousness about the less than perfect service for veterans when they come home. For instance, taking guys that have PTSD 6 months to get the psychological counseling they need, that's inexcusable as far as I'm concerned. And some of the medical things taking longer, and all the issues with Walter Reed Veterans Hospital down there, you know, vermin-infested Veterans Hospital. I'm going, what? This is sacred. These veterans programs should be external of budgetary and political fights. They should set aside this amount of money, and it should be supported no matter what happens. And so being a veteran made me aware of that, and so I'm involved in a lot of various veterans fundraising things, not as much as I'd like to be, but it's never been more important, because there's an interesting thing going on. When I was during Vietnam, if you were sent over, if you were deployed to Vietnam, you did one 13-month tour and you're out. That was it. Now guys are getting redeployed in country 4 or 5 times. A guy goes to Iraq, then he goes to Afghanistan, and he's back to Iraq. And the other thing that's happening is medical science has advanced so far that they're saving these guys' lives, but their brains are scrambled because of IEDs and all these things. And so you have guys, I'm respectfully saying, that are zombies when they get home. And so even though guys are coming home alive, the services to take care of their PTSD and any other medical and emotional issues have never been more necessary. So
we've got a buddy, Michael Mail. He was one of our very first guests here. He did 5 tours.
Man.
5 tours, and now they have, I think it's called TBI. I think it's traumatic brain injury, right? And he's God bless him, but he's one of our dear friends as well. But he's been through a lot, and what you're talking about, and yet even though the treatment that he's getting, the help that he's getting, he's still, it's a grind. I mean, he's got to be the one to get on the phone. He's got to be proactive.
Fight it every day.
Every day, not only the TBI. But he's got to fight getting on the phone,
to get help,
talking to get the help. It's ridiculous.
I think it's wrong.
It is.
I'm really angry about it. And the thing about it is, then it brings up the argument. You know, when you and I were in, there was a draft. You say, so should we go back to that evenly amortizes this this responsibility over the whole population of the United States? But the professional military guys, including the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I heard him say this on TV, say no. The professional military still serves us better because they're highly trained and they are there because they want to be there, and that makes a better service member.
But you know what the flip side of that is? Even though that these guys, and this is what I've noticed, and you may have noticed it too, even though those guys are there because they want to be there, those are the same guys that are coming home. The young guns that are still coming home, they come home, and it's not while they're out there being in service. It's when they come home. That's when they blow their frickin' heads off.
No.
Because there's no help for them.
That's the problem.
Take these meds. I'm like, really? Come on, man. You're still on the med thing? You know? But anyway, you know, we love talking to you. This is awesome having you here.
I'm proud of you guys. This is a great service you're providing here, and I hope veterans around the United States respond with their stories.
Let me ask you this: if you had to sum it up in one thought, how has the military changed your life? And I know you mentioned it, how it did up front, but all-encompassing.
Well, I'll tell you, and it's not an exaggeration, and anybody that has known me since I was a child knows that my stint in the military, my 3.5 years in the Navy, saved my life. It gave me direction, it taught me discipline, it made me proud, it gave me the self-satisfaction of knowing that I served my country. It was a non-combat role, but I did what my country asked, and had they asked me to be in a battle situation, I would have been there, and they introduced me to my career, and they started a chain of events that have made for a really happy life for me, and I owe that to the greatest single decision I ever made in my life, without question, and that was enlisting in the Navy.
Fritz, it's been an absolute delight having you on our show. It's been an honor.
My pleasure, guys.
And thank you for your
Keep up
service.
the good work. Thank you for your service.
Fritz.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for just being beautiful and sitting here.
I love you.
Right?
Because staring at him is old in like 10 minutes.
So I'm the senior. We can share our ARP cards together. I have the AA, you get the RP. Once again, my name is Jeff Bornstein, and we want to thank you for tuning in to Life After War.
Thank you. Folks, and if you're a veteran and you'd like to be on our show, please drop us an email at lifeafterwar@emPOWERme.tv.
Thank you. See you next time. Thank you.